welcome back. Today I am here at Hannamino in regional New South Wales, here ready to talk to Charlie Arnott. So, Charlie Arnott, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you into farming and why regenerative farming?
That's a big question. Chilli, thank you for coming all the way here today, and lovely to have you here. How did I get into farming? A bit about me. Okay, so we live at Hannamino, 5,000 acres here at Burrawa. I grew up here. We used to be a mixed farm. I guess it's still mixed farming somewhat, but very conventional mixed farming when I was a boy, and which meant sheep and cattle, and we grew wool, and we traded cattle and sheep, and we did lots of cropping, all very conventionally. So we used a lot of chemical, a lot of ploughing, a lot of machinery, a lot of input, a lot of sort of feeding grain and hay through the year, and we did that pretty well. You know, with my father and mother bought this place in 1970, and I grew up here, and that's kind of how we did everything. I went away to school, I went to university, I did other things for a few years, and I came back here when I was in my mid-20s, maybe late 30s, and started managing the farm. And then I did it just as my father had, and I knew it to be run conventionally for many years before. We continued that. And then at a time, probably 19 years ago now, I just had a few, I guess more questions were popping up in my mind as to, what I was doing, did it feel good anymore? Did it get me out of bed? Was it aligned with my values? I didn't really know what my values were. But I just didn't, things weren't feeling right. I was watching paddocks blow away. It was probably, that millennial drought, 2000, 2001, 2, somewhere around there. I remember very clearly watching my beautiful basalt soil blow away and thinking that's not right. That's not something I wanted to keep doing. And then I guess over a couple of years, I realised that a lot of that was my doing. We probably blamed the season and the drought. Oh, it's a drought, and it's a bit disastrous, and we've got to sell our stock, and the soil's blowing away, and so on. But I started realising that the decisions I was making, or maybe not making, was actually contributing to the state of the environment and the state of our paddocks and the health of our animals. And so about that time I started making inquiries with other people and meeting different people, and I did a few courses. RCS Australia ran a course called Grazing for Profit, which I did. And then that was the beginning, I'd say. Like, I just started to gobble up information and people's company and other courses, and I found a new tribe. And that was a big turning point. That it felt like I'd found my tribe, and that was I felt more purposeful. I wasn't watching my paddocks blow away in the wind anymore. I wasn't having to drench and vaccinate and kind of do a lot of the animal treatments we were doing just methodically. I wasn't taking advice from a lot of other people about stuff that, I started thinking more about why I was doing things and not just methodically doing something because that's what Dad did or I did. So many things changed. We stopped cropping, so we stopped using all that chemical, artificial fertilisers, and we simplified. It's one of the things we did. And now we grow, we've got beef cattle, we've got sheep, dual purpose merinos, so wool and meat. Got a few pigs running around, probably see a few around here because they keep escaping. And we turn sunshine into grass into meat. It's kind of what we do. And we work much more with nature now. I don't get up every morning going out and kill stuff. I kind of have a very different perspective on my role. I'm helping the landscape heal, and we work with nature.
All right. So you said your farm was 5,000 acres.
Yeah.
So how do you manage livestock rotation on such a large scale? You've got a lot of land. It must be difficult, isn't it?
Look, sometimes it feels difficult, but that's probably more because the fences are terrible or, we're running out of time. I think the important thing to keep in mind is that it's more about the principles. There's a pig over there. There's a black pig walking through the garden. It's about the principles in that it doesn't matter how big a paddock or how big a farm is and how many paddocks you have. It's more how you use them, the number of livestock, the size of the paddocks, and how quickly you move them around, you rotate them. And there's lots of names for that. There's rotational grazing, managed grazing, time control grazing. There's a new one I heard the other day, was adaptive multi-paddock grazing,
Okay.
I mean, they're all kind of a little bit different maybe, but generally the principles are the same. What we started doing was significantly different to what we were doing before, was we put a lot of animals together into one mob, or two mobs as opposed to 6 or 7. We cut up our paddocks into smaller paddocks, and we moved them through those paddocks much quicker. So bigger mobs, smaller paddocks with greater periods of rest between each graze. And that's had significant, impact and improvement on pasture diversity, ground cover, biodiversity, dare I say, health of animals as well, because they've got a greater smorgasbord of plants to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's so again, back to your question, it's really doesn't matter how much land you've got. It's just about how you apply those principles. Obviously the larger amount of land you get, the more land you have, the more hectares, acres, the more fencing you might have to do, and the longer distances you have to go. And your mobs are probably going to be generally bigger because you're working at a bigger scale, but the principles apply the same.
So have you ever gotten on a horseback and explored your entire acreage in one day even?
That is such a good question. I have to say no. I've often thought about walking the whole boundary on foot. And they say, the best fertiliser a man or a woman can put on their land is their own footprints. And that appeals to me. I haven't actually done it yet. Horseback would be quicker, I guess, wouldn't it? And you'd probably have a different point of perspective. But in terms of boundaries, there's a biodynamic practice called the Three Kings, and you do it on the 6th of January, and it involves going to the corners of the boundary of your farm and putting out some different preparations at that time of year. I've done that a number of times, which has sent me to the different corners within the same afternoon or evening. But no, I've thought about it, but you've got me thinking about it again. I should just go and do that because I love walking. There's nothing more in the world, apart from interviewing people, I think, is just walking the paddock with your dog and maybe a family member and just seeing it, because you just see so many different things, different perspectives. I mean, I always do end up with a big list in my mind of all the jobs that need to be done, but that's kind of good too.
Yeah. Can you just briefly touch on what are the Three Kings? Just briefly explain.
Oh, okay. So the preparations are actually gold, frankincense, and myrrh are the 3 gifts that the kings gave. Mary and Joseph.
Okay.
And so the actual physical preparation that you put out is a mixture of those.
Okay.
And there's significance because it's 12 days after Christmas. And in the Northern Hemisphere, that's obviously in their winter. Mm-hmm. Here it's their summer, but it sort of doesn't really matter. And that, apart from the backstory and the Christian context to that, it's essentially an annual offering to the nature spirits and the elementals in the landscape, because there's a lot of unseen things going on out here. We see trees, we see bushes, we see birds and cows and all sorts of stuff, but I'm a firm believer in there's a lot of energies and energetics that happen, and there's things in the environment which help us if we ask for help. And the Three Kings preparation is a bit of an offering and a bit of a thank you. It's about saying, hey guys, I'm here to help. You know, we don't use chemical here anymore. We don't put it in our paddocks. You know, we do things that help all of those unseen sort of elements out there in our landscape to live their normal lives. And they're really, you know, they're very cooperative, if you ask.
Okay. Zig Ziglar says, don't become a wandering generality, be a meaningful specific. So with that in mind, what are your major goals for the next 5 to 10 years in broad strokes?
You know what? When I read I meant to get my 10-year, and that's something I should have done before, is get my 10-year plan there, and I could have read it to you. So it is written down. And essentially, some people call it a BHAG, like big, hairy, audacious goal. And that's a Jim Collins, I think it's a Jim Collins sort of a expression. And essentially, it's about being a source of nutrition and inspiration to others. So backstory, a BHAG is something that is big, hairy and audacious. And because it's a 10 or 15 or 20, 25 year goal, it's something that you can, you know, it's hard for someone to go, oh, that's rubbish. You can't do that. It's like, why not? It's in 10 years' time. Like, a lot can happen in 5 years, let alone 10 years, you know. So ours is about having a number of different enterprises here, having an agritourism component, doing very well in terms of production and husbandry and management of cattle and sheep, that most of our meat goes through to, paddock to plate kind of, through to a butcher, through to families, that our wool is used by, you know, some of the best woolen mills or creators of woolen fabric in the world, that we share this space with many other people in potentially profit share sort of situations. I haven't got the time to run pigs. I can't even keep my pigs in the paddock, let alone run a pig enterprise. So having someone here, and maybe this is, you know, one of your listeners or viewers might want to get in touch with me. Things like, you know, I can see, you know, egg birds, egg producing, you know, chickens in the paddock, you know, but I don't have time to run it. But I'd be happy to explore the idea of someone doing that here. The same with pigs. We have infrastructure that we could just tweak, and people could, you know, someone could have their own pig enterprise here, and we profit share. So that would be an important element of it. So we do cattle, we do pigs. We do cattle, we do sheep, and other people can do some of those other enterprises that I just don't have time for, and I don't have the expertise. You know, it's back to Zig Ziglar. Is that the man? That's him.
Yep.
His big mustache. He, it's absolutely right. You know, I'm not an expert really on anything. You know, having said that, though, there's a few things I am good at, and I'm happy to do those things. And I don't want to become an expert on pigs or chickens, because there are many people who can do a much better job than me. I have resources. I have water. Hopefully, you know, when it rains, and I've got good soil, and I've got plants, and I've got air, and I've got all these wonderful resources that I could be using better or sharing with other people. And if they share that profit and they use their skills, I see that as being a really important part of the future of this business. I love people. People need to be, you know, people. The landscape needs people, I believe, to manage it in particular ways. But people need landscape too, you know. People need. I'd love to share what this landscape and this environment has to offer with other people in terms of, you know, whether there are people living in different cottages on here, or they're visiting a lot, or we've got schools. We've got some plans for exploring a lot of those ideas, but, you know, this landscape comes alive when there are people in it too, not just animals and plants and trees.
That's a cool idea. What is some advice for young people wanting to start regen farming? Can you tell me a couple of most important things on where to focus, where to start, and what skills do you need, and how to learn those? Where to learn those skills?
Yeah, well, I'd have to say university. I hate to say it. Well, not I hate to say it, but going to university is not a prerequisite for anything, I don't think, especially less and less nowadays. I went to university for 4 years, don't regret doing that. But in terms of opportunities for young people nowadays, I think there's so much you can do online. There's so many people that people can, that people can meet and be interns on their farm, get the experience. I think it's really important. I would always say that the experiential wisdom and understanding is so much more valuable than, university punching through units at a university course. So getting on farm, meeting people, reading as much as you can. There's so many opportunities now. When we started doing this, there wasn't really many books. There was certainly nothing online, but we found a way. So in terms of, so finding mentors, I think is really important. Finding people who've done it. Being really clear on why you're going to do it. I mean, it can be a pretty tough gig. Mm-hmm. It's not all beer and Skittles, and you've got many things in your business because that's the other thing I think people need to consider. It has to be a business. I mean, you can do it as a hobby, and that's fine, but in terms of sustainability, of economics and so on, it has to be economically viable, and to do that, you've got to be really clear on what you want to do. Now, if someone's starting farming, they've never farmed before, then they're not probably going to know exactly what they do want to do. They just want to go, I want to go farming. So then it comes a question of, well, what do you feel you're good at? Do you like birds? Do you like ruminants? Is it more plants as opposed to animals? It's about your own resources. Can I find land? What sort of land can I find? Can I crop it? Is it just really grazing land? Can I buy chickens? Have I got the resources to, what resources financially do I have to actually start a business? So being really clear on that, which sounds obvious, but I think a lot of people might just jump into it because it's a really exciting thing, but not spend enough time. Just like I'd always say, if you had the opportunity to rent, especially renting smart, not buying straight away, but renting and just feeling, do I like this area? Do I like this sort of environment? What's the season like? And just feel into it. Work out what you can do based on your resources, what you want to do based on your own skills and how you feel about animals or plants. And then try and hone it in before you start experimenting. Experimenting is really important because and failing, you're going to fail at lots of things. Everyone does in life. But farming especially, because you've got the season, you've got the weather, you've got the markets. There's a lot of things that can kind of disrupt on your journey. So there's going to be some challenges for everyone, new farmers, old farmers alike. And so, but doing things on a small scale first, mm-hmm. and failing small, not failing big in a big way. So to kind of summarise that, before you start experimenting, just focus on something simple and experiment with that. I wouldn't suggest someone gets a farm and goes, right, I'm going to have pigs and sheep and goats and chickens and cows. Because that's 5 or 6 full-on enterprises, different species that will all require different input.
Yep.
So starting very simply and becoming very good at that, at one thing at a time. And you might get to that and go, I'm really good at it, but I don't want to do that anymore. Well, those skills won't be wasted. And then moving to the next thing or another thing. I'd always be wary of any farms who try and diversify too much. There's an old expression from a farming group I used to be involved with called, it's not diversification, it's diversification. Because you've really got to start, to manage all those different enterprises together can be very challenging. And it spreads, people say, it spreads your risk. Yeah, but it also increases your risk because if you can't focus all your energy on that one thing and be really good at it, don't be a walking generality, be a
wandering generality.
Yeah.
Be a meaningful specific.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get good at one thing, or maybe 2 things that are complementary.
Yeah.
So that's, and finding a mentor, finding your tribe, because there will be times when, you'll be disheartened and, you made some mistakes and things have gone badly, or, you know, having good people around you that you can call, you can visit, you can rely on and get that support from. It's really, really important because we're all in this together, you know. That's one of the great things about what I found in regenerative farming, is that everyone really feels they're all willing to help because they've all been on a similar journey, you know. They're just at different stages. The other thing I'd suggest is when you are picking up new practices or principles is to adapt them to your business, don't adopt them. It's not prescriptive, I don't think. What works for the guy down the road for his cows may not work here. So thinking that you just go, I'll pick up that formula and put it on here, I think it's really important to sort of just really think about how can I adapt it? Because you're going to have a different set of resources, different land, different rainfall, different values as well, you know.
So, how do you feel about food these days? Food in supermarkets, full of antibiotics, pesticides, stress on the animals, vaccines? Yeah.
How do I try not to eat much food out of the supermarket.
Yeah.
You know, when we go shopping, we tend to just do the outside loop. But, you know, we're growing more and more food. We don't buy any meat unless we're away somewhere for a period of time and we can't get our meat there. We have our own pork and our own lamb and our beef. We've got honey. We've got milk. You had some milk just before, some fresh milk. Mads is milking every morning. Veggies, veggie garden, fruit in season. So that's what we do, and we do that because we don't like the alternative. It's expensive. It's not necessarily nutritious. I mean, yes, you can source organic food, absolutely, but when you can grow it your own, I'd much rather do that for lots of reasons. You know, I think that, so you can buy organic food, it's labelled organic. It's really sad. I think the whole thing needs to be turned on its head, that, you know, food should be labelled chemical food, and the other stuff, the organic stuff, should be just food. Maybe say organically certified, but why we have to sort of justify or identify what we're not doing, you know, when in the conventional sort of farming world, or in the food that's in the supermarket that's conventionally grown, I think they need to know what's in it. It should say, oh, this animal's been treated with X, Y, and Z, or these plants have been sprayed with whatever else. But that unfortunately has become the norm. People nowadays, you know, most of the food in the supermarket is highly processed, or even the fresh, so-called fresh stuff is conventionally grown with a lot of chemical. Even the flour, like nowadays, when we used to grow wheat here many years ago, and we did a pretty good. We won the odd wheat competition locally, and, you know, we did a pretty good job. But there's no way I would have ever, you know, baked a loaf of bread with our wheat.
Okay.
Because there's a whole lot of chemical in it.
Yeah. You
know, that we'd applied pre-sowing throughout the growing year prior to harvest. And nowadays I understand, well, I know that, I don't know, I'd love to know what percentage, but a lot of conventional farmers are now using glyphosate to desiccate their crop so that they can somewhat control the harvest date, which I totally get, because harvesting without, you know, when is it going to rain and when the truck's arriving and the header and the whole thing. But what happens is it might take a week. Glyphosate doesn't take very long to work. I'm not sure what the period of time is between spraying and harvest, but it's not a very long period of time, and that stuff doesn't go away.
No.
So then that turns into bread, obviously, and pasta. And people wonder why so many people have leaky gut and all sorts of other, you know, immune issues. So there are, dare I say, correlations, not causations. I mean, I'd hazard to say causation, but certainly, you know, there's some interesting correlations between the uptake or the use of glyphosate, Australia and the US, and the increase in many human diseases. I think there's something in that. So did I answer your question?
Yes, it
I'm
does.
not a big fan of processed or conventional food.
No. So I noticed you have interviewed Joel Salatin on your podcast. I have recently heard that he is running a conference where like-minded farmers come together and learn that it's easier to push back against regulations
Yeah.
creatively than to submit to regulations.
Yep.
Is anything like that happening in Australia? And as an example, I am very interested in and want to drink raw milk,
Yes.
but such opportunities for such freedom are non-existent. And don't you think it's about time that we do something about it and push back?
Yeah, well, there are a number of people who are doing that, and it is sad that it gets back to that previous questions about conventional food, that, you know, the less processed natural foods are the ones that are vilified. It's like, oh, you can't, it's dangerous to have raw milk. It'll kill you. And it's like, well, isn't, before we pasteurise and homogenise, that's what people had, and that's the most nutritious form, And so, yes, there are people pushing back, and there's, New South Wales is probably not generally as bad as Victoria in terms of, say, raw milk sort of stuff. I'm not producing anything that is necessarily, and we're not trying to sell anything. We do, lamb, pork, and beef. There's not too much that, is, it's not like the raw milk situation. I think it's really sad that people can't make that choice themselves. Like, why someone has to tell us what we can and can't buy. Like, label it, make people aware, give them a choice. And there's, plenty of creative ways to get around that people are doing. The way it's labelled, the way it's called, like calf milk. Calves drink calf milk. It's not human for human consumption. It's calf milk, which is exactly what it is. So, and there are great people. I know Tammy Jonas down there at Jonai Farms. She's part of a group who are, she does her own on-farm butchery. You right there, Billy? We're talking about meat, and he's just going, "Oh, I'm hungry." Hey, mate, quit it. So, she's doing great things with, helping people find ways to legally produce food and get it to people. But she's pushing boundaries, and those boundaries need to be pushed, because it's disgraceful that bureaucracy can override the basic needs and rights of people to access nutritious food. And there's a lot of good people, and there's a lot of good people who've suffered, financially and socially because they have pushed back. But no one's giving up, and it'll only get stronger. The whole thing around organically biodynamic food is growing. No one's going into the supermarket or the grocery store going, "Hey, can I have more of that GMO corn? Or that lettuce that's been sprayed with those chemicals?" No one's saying that. More and more people are going in and going, "I want the stuff that's chemical free. I want the stuff that's not GMO." And it's the same with the raw milk. The more people that can create the demand, the stronger the stronger the, not just the argument, but the force will be for those people to actually, be eventually able to sell it. And look, maybe that won't happen. Maybe the bureaucracy will always be really strong, but there'll be creative ways that people can get around it legally, and it has to happen. We're not robots. We're not sort of, we're humans who are creative. We're doing great things for the environment as we grow beautiful food, and they're the sort of people who will find a way through that sort of stuff, through and around it. It needs to happen.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, you didn't leave this question. There's a sneaky.
It's the final question.
Caught me by off guard. Oh, I don't know. I'm not prepared. Hope you can't see my red shoes there, my Ronald McDonald shoes.
Don't think so.
No. My legacy. It is a really, really good question. I do think about it every day, actually. this is my legacy. You know, creating a sanctuary for my children and their children, giving them the option to work here or not, and live here or not, because that's one thing we can definitely do. We can make the decisions on this landscape to steer it towards, you know, through a healing process, through productive process, through, you know, cultural process with more people engaged in activities here and business and commerce. Agri-tourism, sharing that, you know, with people who wouldn't necessarily have or want to have their own farm but still find it important to access good food and experience farming to some extent. You know, maybe with the podcast, it's a bit of an intellectual legacy. You know, it's like what you're doing, creating. It's an archive of stories, and I think that's important. You know, because they're still all relevant. You know, someone could listen to a podcast that's 5, 10, 20 years old, and it's still going to be, you're still going to pick out, you know, bits of it. So yeah, the legacy is something I think about a lot, and that's often one of the things that drives me. Drives me crazy sometimes, but it drives me to you know, create a situation where this is an asset, and not an asset. This is a sanctuary that my family want to come back to. You know, give them the option, because I love it here, and I like to think others might too. You know.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this interview, Charlie. For anyone wanting to follow you or listen to your podcast, I will have all the social links in the description below.
Fantastic.
Is there anything else you want to add or say to the audience?
Audience, hello. Thanks for hanging there for the last 25 minutes. I just want to say, Chilli, thank you so much for coming here. I think what you're doing is awesome. I only just even got to know you existed less than a week ago, and now you're here. That's fantastic. You've travelled some way to get here, and I wish you all the very best for your endeavours. I know you're heading south to Tasmania soon. You're starting a new chapter of your life and with your family, and your regenerative journey has already started, no doubt. And I wish you all the best. Make sure you keep in touch. And I think it's amazing and fantastic what you're doing, that at 19 you've decided that you want to be a farmer. And if you're making those decisions at 19 about that sort of a career, I think you have a very big career in front of you. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget me when you're famous.
I won't.